I'm a big obsessed. That doesn't even make sense. Hey, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Bethany Ellen. I'm an award-winning photographer based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. My entire job is to help people realize their own potential, whether that's through the photos I take or the students I teach. And today I'm going to talk to you about everything you need to get started in your own photography business. Some of you may have started the new year with a goal to start your photography business off fresh. Some of you might have gotten cameras for holiday seasons. Some of you might want to get more serious about photography and are curious about the business aspect of it, but aren't really sure where to go. I was that person. New Year's Day 2013, I bought my first camera with absolutely no idea, clue, or goal for what I wanted to do. I just actually wanted to buy a nice camera and justify it. And if you're in that boat, welcome. There's no judgment here from me because, like I said, I was there. What happened to me is that I ended up spinning my wheels for about 5 years before I wanted to get more serious about photography. And I saw no growth, no change, no real income from my photography business because I did not have any resources. Well, I'm sure the resources were available to me, but I wasn't taking advantage of them. You're already doing a better job of that by watching this video. So this is my video in an attempt to be who I needed when I was younger, and get you off on the right track so that way you can go forth and flourish way faster than I did. Okay, let's dive right in. So I think that the first thing that you're going to want to take a look at is if you actually want a photography business. And of course, you're probably like, of course I do, Bethany. That's why I'm watching this video. Take a deep examination of it because as many seasoned photographers try to tell new photographers, it's not always easy. And I think they do it in this very jaded way, right? Where they're like, oh, you don't even know, I lose all this money and it's not even very fun and blah. And they try to bring down these photographers who are new and excited about this journey and these goals that they have, right? And so then that new photographer feels discouraged, might not even pursue photography as a career, or just, might not have the right idea or resource of where to go. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is if you would like to take money for your services, there are a lot of things that you need to do to get off on the right track, right? And if you don't want to do that, it's fine. There is no shame in being a hobbyist photographer. In fact, some hobbyist photographers are the best artists I know. And because they don't have the day-to-day of the business wearing them down, they actually create way more insane pieces, right? Now, there's a trade-off to that. They don't get to write off their materials. They don't necessarily get income from their photography business. They do not or cannot take money because they're not set up as a business that way. So there's definitely trade-offs to both. I would analyze whether or not the business aspect of photography appeals to you enough that you can stomach it for the sake of your art. If not, move on. It's okay. If so, watch the rest of this video and make sure that you are set up for success, because I have watched plenty of photographers have a business, but because that business does not do well, they become discouraged as artists, and then they fall out of love for their passion and they shut the whole thing down within a couple of years. I want to keep you successful, happy, thriving, and creative, right? That's my goal with this video. So don't take anything too as an attack if you don't have it set up the right way. I'm not saying that you're not a business or you're not a real photographer. That is definitely not the goal here. And I hate to have all these disclaimers. Again, I'm just trying to speak from the heart here. If you want a business, if you want to take money for services, then this video is for you and this lifestyle is for you. Right? If that's not the case, there's no shame in it. I just want you to have a clear idea of your goals. The first thing is if you intend to take money for services, I don't care how much money, I don't care how good you think you are if you're just starting out and if you don't think that you deserve a ton of money or you're willing to cut a deal so that way you can get more photos in for practice. All of that is totally fine and normal, but if you intend to take money for your services, you need to set yourself up as a business. That can seem really intimidating and really scary, and I know it can. What's worse is having income reported for services that you rendered with no business license of any kind. That gets really awkward really fast. So And especially with these like things like Venmo and PayPal, all of those are now reporting to the IRS. So you don't want to get yourself in a situation that you can't necessarily get yourself out of. Start off on the good habits, because then you won't have to spend more time fixing the bad ones, right? So even if you don't think that you're going to charge a lot of money, whatever a lot of money means to you, I want you to look into setting yourself up as a business. There are lots of different types of business filings and ways that you can file as a business. For me, consulting my tax accountant and consulting my financial advisor, it made sense to set myself up as an LLC. And everything runs through that LLC for me. For you, that could be a sole proprietorship. There's S corps. There's tons of different things involved. And I could try to teach you about all of those business structures, but I wouldn't be the best person to do it, because for me, I know about filing an LLC, right? And that's where I would say 90% of sole proprietor photographers fall. LLC. Now, somebody's typing a comment right now about how LLC was actually not a good idea for them. That's fine. I encourage you to do your own research about your own lifestyle with your own professionals, because it's going to vary state by state too. Now, in the state of Ohio, where I am, filing an LLC is ridiculously easy. It took about 20 minutes and $100 or $150, and I was set up as a business. So what that means, though, there are implications to that. You are now going to have to file income tax on behalf of that business. You are now going to have to file sales tax on behalf of that business. There are a couple more complicated things, but it also gives me some really great benefits. A, I'm licensed to do business in the state of Ohio. That's a pretty big deal, you know, compared to when I was just risking it. And if something happened, I was liable. That being said, having an LLC allows you to apply for business insurance. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. And it also allows me to write off materials that I would use in any kind of photo shoot. And let me tell you, there are a lot of things I can get creative when it comes to writing off, right? That is all super helpful to have. And that's why an LLC worked for me. If you haven't done anything else yet, I would encourage you to get that part started as soon as possible. So that way, any session you do, anything you do going forward, you have the ability to write it off as a business expense. You have the ability to track it as, you know, building the business. And if somebody happens, God forbid, to need to use any sort of, you know, insurance or bring some kind of lawsuit about, you are protected. So get yourself set up as a business first. And I know that some of this can seem kind of basic, right? You're like, well, I know that, right? However, you've got folks that are starting out for the first time. And again, I would rather them start out on the right foot instead of doing what I did, which was spend a year fixing 5 years worth of mistakes. So that's what I'm going to say about that. The next thing you're going to want to make sure of is that you have proper permits. Again, I know I'm talking about very, very boring stuff. Don't you want to talk about building your portfolio and learning different, you know, craft techniques? Of course. But I also want to make sure you're protected. Proper permits and insurance are super, super important if you are going to run a business. You don't want to show up on private property without a shooting permit. Ask me how I know. Thank you so much for asking. I'll tell you one story. I was at a castle. I had called ahead and said, I want to film at this castle. It's, you know, down the road in Loveland, Ohio. And I talked to somebody. They said, yes, you can come. It's $100 permit fee. Here's your application. I had to fill out an application, right? Well, nobody had record of my permit. And so when I went to go film, they had the gates locked, and I had like knocked on the door and kind of shook the gates. Well, they had security cameras. So they got an alert that somebody was walking around their property, AKA to them trespassing, because they didn't have record of my permit. And I heard from the bushes, put your hands up. The cops are on their way. I am armed. Right? If I had shown up without proper permits, I would have been arrested, and I would have absolutely been justified to be arrested, right? So I'm really passionate about having the right permits, and passionate about permits seems like something really silly to say. And it is kind of silly. It's kind of nerdy, right? But I want to make sure that you don't ever get in a situation where if there's a dispute on property, you want to be the one that has permission to be there, right? If somebody approaches you at a park and says, you can't photograph here, you want the documentation that shows that you do. Likewise, if you're running a studio out of your home, you need to have proper permitting to conduct business out of your home. That's important too. All of this leads into insurance, right? Business insurance is super inexpensive, but super, super valuable. And some places when you go to get a permit, especially my wedding photographers, you're going to be required to hold some sort of insurance licensure as well, or insurance policy that covers against liability. So that way, God forbid, let's say you're running a studio out of your home and a client trips and a piece of, seamless paper falls on them and they have to go to the hospital or get checked out. You want every bit of licensure that shows you have permission to be conducting that business and you have business insurance to cover that expense, because otherwise it could get really nasty out there. And if you think like, oh, that would never happen to me, I'm super careful. Let me tell you, I think I spent the first year that I started getting serious about photography just breaking things. I broke a lot of things all the time. I even broke a client's sunglasses one time because I sat on them, right? You're so new and you're so nervous and you're so jittery as you learn this skill and learn to be vulnerable in front of clients that it sometimes can turn into jitters and anxiety. And then you end up in a situation where you've broken something, you've broken someone, and you are liable. So permitting is super important. Before you pick up a not before you pick up a camera, but before you get somebody in front of your camera for money, make sure that you are set up to do so for your own sake is all I'm asking. Again, not a personal attack. I did this wrong for many years. But now if I could go back and give myself advice, these are the first pieces that I would get set up before I took any paying clients in. Okay. We can talk about it now. We can talk about something fun. Let's talk about building your portfolio as a photographer. So once you have all of this set up, or even as you're kind of working toward this is when you can start building your portfolio. Model calls are super, super helpful and can help you get a ton of work for you to show on your website, in your marketing materials, etc. There is a right and wrong way to do just about everything, if you are me. Trust me, I have opinions on it all. But there is also a right and wrong way to do a model call. You want to make sure that you're getting the right expectations out of model calls so you don't start again off on the wrong foot in your business. For me, model calls typically work like this. I have to have a concept that I am super interested in photographing. Now, because I have the concept, that means that I'm in charge of wardrobe, potentially hair and makeup, location, all of that, right? So it is very, very important that I get all of this lined up. Now, if you're having trouble with this, I do have a digital guide on my website that you can download. I also have a printed guide that you can get as well. This is going to go into planning all kinds of styled sessions, how to do model calls, how to get your permits, all of that, right? But as I am building my portfolio, I want to make sure I have the right expectations for the people who get in front of my camera. So if I'm looking for somebody in particular, I will post model call. Here's the requirements. Age, if I'm looking for anything specific. I try to make sure that I don't pigeonhole myself too much and I get something that is vague enough that multiple people could fit. I will source my models and I will either rent a studio on behalf of the concept I need or will find a location outdoors depending on what I'm looking for. So I do that multiple times. And in fact, if you're nervous to take money for, photography services, or if you don't have any of the specific image you're trying to market, I would say do it 10 times. Because you're going to need a variety of images to market to your potential audience. And model calls are a great way for you to understand how clients work and how their brains work. And so you will start to get more comfortable speaking to people who are paying you for the service. A lot of people ask me if I take a deposit for model calls, and it just really doesn't work for me. For me, I want to make sure that something as small as a portrait session, I don't need to take a deposit for. I take your full session fee up front. And so deposits just don't work. Having ADHD too, it can just be hard to remember oh yes, this is this person's deposit and it gets refunded if they show up. It just has never worked for me. Now, does that mean I have to deal with the occasional no call, no show? yeah, and I just have to learn to find a different way to repurpose that time so it is still going towards my business. I may not be shooting, but maybe I'll shoot a YouTube video, or maybe I will do something else. Maybe I'll work on some business paperwork. So that way I'm still working, quote unquote. It might not be as fun, but I'm still working. Model calls for me, I like to have a couple lined up too. So even if I want to just shoot one that day, I'll make sure to have 2 or 3. So that way it's like boom, boom, boom. And then I have 3 new sessions that I get to go home and edit and practice. And I've been able to see all of the different things that I have, worked on throughout the day. So I just line up multiple model calls. And if one no call, no shows, then I have 2 more on their way, right? And I don't do them at the same time, but at least, I'll build them in that way rather than trying to charge a deposit. Let's talk wardrobe. We're going to touch briefly on this because I have 2 really other good resources for this too, and I don't want to take up too much of this video's time by talking about wardrobe, but it's something I could talk about all day. When I was starting out, I did not have a client closet like I did, and I'm gonna shoot another video about how to build your client closet. So again, I don't want to harp on this, but I will say that renting was super, super helpful to me. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, with the amount you're spending, you might as well just buy the gown. Sometimes the gown's not available, and sometimes I don't have the space to keep the gown, and sometimes I don't want to photograph the gown more than once. In that case, renting actually saves a decent amount of money, or is better for, your lifestyle. So I would look at gown rental sites like RFX Gowns, Mama Bump Rentals. Keep those in your back pocket so that way if you want to try something out but don't necessarily want to commit, you have the option to do so. That will help you also get inspired as you're building your client portfolio. One other note, as you're building your portfolio, don't think that you can't accept less just because you're newer. Now, this is obviously a fine line. Are you going to be able to charge prices based on your name if you haven't built your name? No. But don't think that you deserve a less than livable wage as you're building your business. In fact, the goal should be the opposite. If you want to support yourself on photography income, you need to be brave enough to put your prices where you can do that. Otherwise, you're just going to spin your wheels and burn out. So yes, can you offer a sale every now and then? Can you offer an opening special? Yes, but you need to have a cutoff date or a cutoff number so that way you get back to learning how to earn what you want to earn. Constantly undercutting yourself, constantly comparing yourself is just a bad idea. I'm going to be frank with you. It's a bad idea. If you're wondering if you're ever going to be as good as the people you see online, I'm telling you right now, you never will be. And it's not because you won't learn your craft or you won't elevate what you're doing. It's because you're going to be comparing yourself to other people online and you're going to be afraid that you're not going to be as good as them for the rest of your life. Welcome to photography. Yeah? So I want you to make sure that as you're building your portfolio, you are not undercutting or underselling yourself simply because you're building your portfolio. Yes, you're going to grow, you're going to improve. You may not necessarily be able to start at super high wages, but I want you to also be able to calculate your cost of doing business so that way you understand if you're working for an adequate amount of money. There's no point in starting a side hustle if you're not eventually going to earn something from it. True story, I worked with this photographer one time who was kind of in, panic mode, right? And she was just not in the space to learn. And I kept telling her, we need to revisit this conversation at a different time. But she was very interested and I think very passionate about her job, or her business. And I said, okay. And we did some math and I said, do you realize you're working for 11 cents an hour? And she said, but I'm just starting out. And I said, I could just start out at any job. I could go to a fast food restaurant. I could go to a corporate job. There are plenty of jobs I could do, but even if I was just starting out and I would have been paid for training and I would have been paid a minimum wage, right? Now again, is that minimum wage worth it to me? I'm not sure. But even entry-level jobs deserve living wages. They may not be as high as you want them to be, but they should still be livable. So make sure that you're not necessarily doing charity work on behalf of your hobby in the sense that you're giving people such discounts that you're working for nothing or basically next to nothing, right? I want you to be able to earn livable wages. Okay, age-old question. Do you need a studio if you're gonna be a full-time photographer? No, you don't. There are plenty of photographers that run their studios out of their home, out of their garage, or have a mobile studio where they go to parks, they go to public locations, they photograph, and then, they do their print sales elsewhere, remote. There are plenty of options. I'm here, like I said, at Studio 821. This is a resource for photographers in Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky who want to rent by the hour. For me, renting by the hour works. I have also been full-time in a studio. I have also been full-time out of my home. There are plenty of options for you. You just have to find and develop that workflow to make it, again, worth it and something that is consistent and replicable. So that way your clients are getting the same experience no matter where they are. But you want to have all of that set before you start taking clients in. Speaking of client experience, if you're going to start taking clients on, you need to know what that experience is before they get into your books. What does that mean? Let me break it down a little bit more. So I'm very big obsessed with client experience and client journey. If something feels off or wrong, I want to make sure I fix it. So you want to know what that client experience is before you have somebody testing that UI, right? I come from a software world, so, I talked a lot about quality checks and quality assurance because you wanted to see if somebody could break it before you launched it out into the market. There was nothing worse than having it launched out into the market and then, yikes, big problem, big bug that we didn't see, right? So I want you to be able to map out what a client experience looks like from the moment they contact you to the moment their deliverables are done. What is every step through the process so that way you have a clear understanding of what they will experience and can communicate that experience to your client. This is also going to help you in things like marketing and blogging, all of that, because you're going to have things to talk about, right? So I know it seems a little cheesy, especially if you're not booking clients currently, but maybe that's part of the process. You need to figure out where are they coming from? How are they contacting you? How would you not like them to contact you? How many emails do you send them? How do they schedule? How do they book? All of that needs to be written down so that way if a client comes with a preemptive question, you don't stand there like a deer in the headlights and go, let me ask my boss. Because newsflash, you're the boss now. And that can be exciting and that can be terrifying. And it's often both at the same time. So I want you to have that on the forefront of your mind. What is the client experience? That way you can also say whether or not this is expected or if this is a bug, right? If they don't like a piece about your client experience, but it's a set part of your client experience for a reason, they're just not your client. If they don't like part of the client experience because it's something you didn't anticipate, that's a bug, right? So you're going to want to make sure that you map it out. Maybe you even role play it a little bit or have a friend come in and, have them play photographer with you for a little bit, play pretend. And I know, again, that feels very weird. It feels very cheesy and cringe, right? But I would rather be cheesy and cringe and have really loyal clients than not do it for the sake of being afraid to look stupid and then having really upset clients because I didn't bother to test it, write it out, do anything. I just kind of figured it out by the seat of my pants. So map out your client experience. What do you want your client to feel like all the way through, not just at the end of the session, all the way through. Got it? Okay. Now, you've got images for your portfolio. You've got your business licensure set up. You have your desired client experience mapped out. Let's talk about branding because branding is a big, big piece of this. Now, I'm also going to film a big branding video where we're going to go into the ins and outs and big in-depths of branding, right? But branding should already be a part of what you do. You don't want to figure it out as you're taking clients on. Once you take on clients, you're going to be too busy to figure this stuff out. So if you don't have clients right now, I don't want you to think of this as like something bad. This is an opportunity. This is time for you to figure all of this out so that way once you start to get them in the door, you are hitting the ground running. So take a look at your branding. Branding is more than a logo or brand colors, right? But you want to have that set. You want to figure out your brand voice, your marketing strategy. You want to figure out how do you speak to clients and how do you want clients to be spoken to? How do you want them to feel? What things are things you would not say in an email to clients versus what you would say, right? If part of your brand is being casual and fun, you need to have that flow naturally through all of your website copy and your email copy, all of that. But if you are more formal, if you are more business focused, I don't know. I'm not a formal person, as you can tell. You want to make sure that everything looks formal and polished. Polished is the right word. You want to make sure everything looks polished, right? Before you get in front of clients. Otherwise, you're going to appear wrong to a client if you don't have it figured out, but you won't even know what's wrong because you haven't taken the time to write this out. So start thinking about your brand, your essence of a company, and your client experience. So that way, when the clients come in, they know exactly how they should feel and what they should expect. As you're building your portfolio, you want to make sure you're also building your digital portfolio. So start setting up a website, start owning a domain, and start setting up your social media accounts. This is how clients are going to find you. So it's definitely not too early to get that set up. In fact, the earlier you have it set up, the sooner clients can start, getting access to you, right? Now, one thing to note is that you're going to need pictures for that website. So maybe wait until you have a couple of images set up, but that is what building the website is for. You can use a lot of different places for your website. Your social media channels are going to be set, right? Depending on where your clients are, that is where you're going to need to set up your social media channels. And you're also going to need to do a social media audit of your personal social media. Because again, when you're a business owner, things are a little bit different. So you're going to want to make sure that, you clean up those social media profiles if they're not cleaned up already, or that you're active on those social media profiles if you're not already. Both are going to have different implications. So you're going to want to make sure to do an audit of your personal social media. You're going to want to set up business social media because there is a pretty big difference, and you're going to want to have both, especially if you're planning on presenting yourself as a business. But you're also going to want to set up your website. Now, there are a ton of places to go for website setup. I can speak from experience. I use Squarespace and really, really enjoy it. I know that WordPress is an option too. I know that WordPress often involves a little bit more tech savviness than I might have. So for me, Squarespace is perfect. Now, I try to avoid something that doesn't give me a whole lot of control, and I try to avoid something that I need all of the control too, right? So as you're, looking for website vendors, you don't have to stick with one or the other, but once you have a domain and get things set up, it's pretty hard to move. So I would make sure that you have invested the time and the money in what you actually want versus trying to make it work with something cheaper and then having, potentially to lose your domain or to lose all of your ability to get on a business site. I know there's a Wix site out there with my name on it that sometimes I found one time that somebody had booked a session on that website and I had no idea how they did it, right? So you need to make sure that everything's set up well, so you're not going back again and fixing mistakes that you made later. But make sure to set up that website as soon as possible. A website is also going to give you access to things like search engine optimization, which you can do yourself or you can pay somebody to do, but you can't do it until you have a website, right? So make sure that you've got a place for people to go get more information about you or at least contact you. In this day and age, social media is extremely, extremely important to have as a business owner. But I also don't think it is the only thing that you should have. I think that you should have a website. I think that still has merit and value in this day and age. So from here, you should be pretty set. Now, I'm sure there are things I'm forgetting. I'm sure this is not everything, but in my opinion, this is what I would have before I took a paying client if I could do it over again, right? The rest comes with time and experience and growth. Here is my message to you going forward. This is amazing. This is an opportunity. You are going to have good days and bad days. That is the gig, right? It's not all glitter and confetti and photos and pretty pictures. It's not all gloom and doom and bad economies. There's duality in it. This is the magic. This is the best job in the world. You are opening yourself up to becoming one of the best things you can be, in my opinion. This is my favorite job I've ever had. Working for yourself is hard, but it is very, very rewarding. Do not let anybody belittle you as you start to grow. Do not let anybody tell you that you can't make it. Just go out there, prove them wrong, but do it right, So I encourage you to keep in touch with me on your journey. If you have any questions, you can find me on social media. My Instagram is @bethany.ellen. You can also join my Facebook group. This is a great big like-minded community of individuals who are here for you and here to help encourage and grow their craft just like you are encouraged. You want to encourage other people and grow your craft. So that is the best place to go. Bethany Ellen Photography Education. I will link it in the show notes below. If you have any more in-depth questions, make sure you can find me on social media, like I said. But otherwise, stay confident, stay humble, but know that you can and you will do it. This is the best job in the world. I'm so excited for you.